So I've got my Samsonas suspension apart today, and I wanted to make a video on how to inspect and adjust the bushings inside of the housing body that the insert actually rides on. And the reason we're doing this today is if we look down inside of this body here, you can see that the first bushing is way down in there. It's about 1.5 inches down. And that's too far down, and I need to adjust that back up. And the lower one is slipped as well. So where should these be, and how do you check them? So here I've got 2 new bushings that I'm going to be putting in the body here. And this is what the insert actually rides on. So the general idea with these bushings is that you place them as far apart as possible to give stability to the insert as it's articulating up and down. So that means basically you're going to have one bushing in the body as far up as possible and the other as far down as possible while still remaining on the insert itself at full droop. So how do you check these things? So, well, first of all, let's talk about the top bushing. So I don't want the top bushing all the way up against the seal here, as that would leave no room for any grease, and then any dirt or water that I'm ingesting past the seal goes right onto the bushing surface itself and scars it. So you want to leave like a 3/16 to 1/4 inch gap between the bottom of the seal and the top of the first bushing, so that you can fill that with grease, so that the insert actually picks up that grease as it carries it through the bushing travel, and also so that grease will catch all incoming dirt and debris in that grease pocket before it gets onto the bushing surface itself. So that's pretty self-explanatory. That's the top one. The bottom one is the more difficult one to position. So basically we want this to rest as far down on the insert body as we can get without going past it at full droop. So basically we want this second bushing to be fully engaged on the insert body that it's going to ride on at full droop. We don't want it partially engaged, or even worse, not engaged at all, because that means that as soon as we go full droop, say over a jump, and then we slam back down, there's the possibility that this could land cocked and you actually push into the bushing and you knock the bushing way down into the housing, and then you're not even riding it on it anymore. Then you've got a lot of lateral pressure on the insert shaft here. You'd probably blow your seal out. You'd probably damage the upper seal here. So not a great situation. So how do we determine where to position this lower bushing? Well, we can figure this out with a tape measure. So the overall length of this body to the top of the seal is about 13 inches here, and then minus the thickness and distance to where the insert bottom is going to sit, which is right here. So that's about, say, 1/2 inch, and then minus the seal thickness, which is probably around 3/8 of an inch. And what we end up with roughly is around 12 1/4 to 12 3/16 inches from the mounting point at the bottom of the insert up to the top of the measurable zone here. So if we then go over and measure our insert body, we've got a little less than 8 inches, about 7 3/4 inches, from the mounting face down here to the place where we're full engagement on the actual insert body. So that minus our 12 inches and 1/8 roughly means we've got about 4 3/16 inches from the top of this body down to the bottom of this bushing. So when we put this bushing in, that's our target, is we don't want any deeper than that 4 and 3/8 number about. And that's going to put the bushing, the lower bushing, in the right spot. So these are the numbers you check to as well if you're visually taking a look at the bushing, or if you've got a scale to throw down there when you take these apart and rebuild, to make sure that bottom bushing hasn't slipped. These are going to be different numbers for different housings and different damper inserts. So my rears are probably going to be a different spacing number than the front. This is what I've got here, is a front that I'm taking apart. So now we know that our bushings are out of position. We've got to reposition them, or potentially even replace them. How do we do that? We're going to use this little puck that I've made to do this. So this is something that I just made on a lathe and a sander very quickly. And this has got a step diameter in it, and then it's just got like a 3/8 or a 5/16 thread through. And what the step diameter is for is to catch the bushing lip. So this is smaller than the diameter of the housing. And then we're going to use this to slide hammer the old bushings out, and then to hammer the new bushings in. And then it's got these flats ground into it with a belt sander, so that basically you hold it like this and you slip it in, and then once it's inside the housing body, you turn it and drop it back down, and then we're going to thread a slide hammer onto it and then slide hammer the old bushings out. Now, the older bushings on these Samsonas, I have an earlier set, are smooth backed, which means as soon as they start to slip, they'll get grease behind them because there's grease in the housing, and then they'll slip even easier and they'll move more. The new bushing design has a knurled exterior, so these things, once you put them in place, they're not going anywhere. And actually it takes some serious hammer persuasion to get them to the right place to begin with in these housings. So I knew this was coming. I've replaced a couple bushings in some of the other bodies before. I'm going to take these out. I'm going to put the new knurl design in. I'm going to measure it out in the right spot, and we're going to throw this back together. There's bushing number 1. You can see smooth backed. That's exactly why it started to slip as soon as we got grease behind it. And there's bushing number 2. So I'm going to clean this up, wipe down, make sure the inside of this bore is absolutely spotless, no grease at all, before I put the new bushings in, because I don't want the new bushings to immediately start slipping. And then we'll use the same tool to press the new bushings in. Okay, so remember, I had previously figured out that with my stack up, I need the bottom of the lower bushing to be at 4 3/8 from this top lip to still engage fully on the insert and be as low down as it can go. So that's roughly the number I'm going to aim for. So I'm going to take my little tool here, and I'm going to put it up top, make sure I'm nice and square, and I'll just start tapping that down into the housing. And that's immediately going to get very, very difficult as the knurled part comes into play. So now I'm going to strike on the cylinder instead so I don't damage my cap, and I'm going to start working it down and measuring, working it down and measuring. I'm just going to make sure that I'm striking evenly and that this is going down in straight. We do not want this to get cocked, and we do not, because these are actually split bushings, right? They're not a single round tube. So if you hit this unevenly, you can spread the split bushings and then ruin it, and you'll have to pull it back out, and it is a bear to get back out, so you don't want to do that. that should be in a pretty darn good position. Yep. So I like where that's at. I'll drive bushing number 2 in. So same thing, get it nice and square. Alright. So this is my final end gap right here. Hopefully you can see that. Now remember that the seal is going to take up some of that. So I got to make sure I got that 3/16 to 1/4 inch spacing for the grease. I'm going to clean up that seal, see if I can reuse it. Otherwise I'll replace it. I'll re-grease this and put it back together and we're good to go. And that's it.